Thank you for having me, sir. It's wonderful to be here. I'm a historian. I'm writing right now a multiple-volume history of the American conservation movement. My first volume was The Wilderness Warrior, which was on Theodore Roosevelt, Gifford Pinchot, and others at the beginning of the 20th century. My second volume that's out now is called The Quiet World, Saving Alaska's Wilderness Kingdom, 1879 to 1960. So I've recently spent quite a bit of time in Alaska, including going to the Arctic Refuge camping. And I might add that I was also the director of the Eisenhower Center, and we would collect World War II oral histories of our veterans. And I've written on D-Day and Battle of the Bulge, working on work on Quezon and the Marines at Quezon, et cetera. My father served in the Korean War as a ski trooper in Alaska. And I'm very glad to see Mo Udall behind me here, one of the great figures, congressional figures in American history on wilderness and Alaskan protection. I was hoping to get to meet Mr. Young, but I don't think he's here right now. He's there by the door, by the exit sign, and Mo Udall's there behind me because Mo Udall had the right idea of what to do to protect Arctic Alaska, as did Dwight Eisenhower. The Arctic was saved by Ike 50 years ago. He was not known as one of our great conservationist presidents per se at the time. He was a fiscal conservative, but he pushed for Alaska statehood very bravely, because back then, Alaska today you think of as a red state. The first two senators from Alaska were Democrats, and Ike went forward with it at any rate for the state. And that's when the Arctic Refuge got created, with the Fairbanks Daily Miner for the Arctic Refuge being created. It's become Eisenhower's great reserve. We just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Arctic, and it is like Yellowstone or the Grand Canyons or the Great Smoky Mountains or Big Bend. It's one of the most important treasured landscapes in the United States. And I'm here, the reason I flew in today, left my family and my 3 kids back in Austin, Texas. I came here today to propose that these kind of meetings probably need to stop. I think we're at the point now that President Obama needs to use the Antiquities Act of 1906, power that Theodore Roosevelt used so effectively to save the Grand Canyon from congressional people who wanted to mine it for zinc, copper, and asbestos, and put the coastal plain, what's called 1002, the biological heart of the Arctic Refuge, the great polar bear denning area, the key cornerstone of our marine ecosystem of America's Arctic Alaska, and create a Eisenhower National Monument, have an executive order by President Obama. I suggest we bypass Congress on this, as is done consistently. In fact, George W. Bush, our last president, used the Antiquities Act to create the largest national monument in Hawaii, our great maritime national monument, executive power. And I think the president needs to do that. We're living in a time of climate change. The Arctic Refuge is home of our charismatic animal, the polar bear. It's also a place that people get some solace in this noisy, hyper-industrialized world. We can't put how do you put a price tag on solitude? And the thought at this moment in time, in 2011, that we're looking at a 50-year reserve and talking about it, opening it up to Dutch oil companies and British oil companies. There are people right now trying to mine uranium out of the Grand Canyon. This seems to me to be backwards. We've got to move forward in this country. I'm all for oil. I lived for a long while in New Orleans. Petroleum dollars are important. We need to be using the Gulf of Mexico as an industrial zone that we are. But we have to have treasured landscapes, and places like Chesapeake, in my opinion, and Arctic Alaska have earned the designation of being thematic with what American conservation is. Eisenhower not only saved the Arctic Refuge 50 years ago, but he also is the person in charge of demilitarizing and not having the Antarctica developed. And why we want to call it the Eisenhower National Monument in the coastal plain is the country finally do something for Eisenhower instead of just highway signs and parkway signs. It'd be a fitting monument. I go to Anchorage, and there is an Eisenhower statue and a little memorial in there. But the role the U.S. Army's played in Alaska's history in World War II and building of the Alcan Highway and in the current U.S. troops there, the incredible role the federal government's played in Alaska. I think our country should honor Eisenhower the way North Dakota honored Theodore Roosevelt with Theodore Roosevelt National Park in the Badlands. We should have a Eisenhower National Monument in the Arctic Refuge.